And we are on, let me turn back the clock here and find out what chapter we're on. We're on chapter 28. All suffering is born of desire.
Yeah.
And the question for today is why is there so much stress on self-negation? Right? This idea.
Muting us.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
So much
You're so diligent in that. Okay, here we go. Mute. Oh, yes. All right. And I always feel like I have to tell everybody, you're welcome to unmute for anything. if you want to unmute and blow a whistle, that's fine. Just this is just to keep out the background noises. All right. So he just gets finished telling him that only in complete self-negation is there a chance to discover our real being. And this is something I've been thinking about, when I was started this focus, as I've mentioned before, like the last few months, I've been really focusing on body-mind, trying to understand when the scriptures say you are not the body and you are not the mind. I realized a few months ago, after 20 years in a monastery, I realized just a few months ago that I had no idea what that meant. You're not the body mind. It's something I've heard repeated. I've said it to thousands of people. And I was sitting there just thinking randomly one afternoon, I was like, you're not the body mind. And I was like, what? That doesn't, what do you mean I'm not the body mind? It's like my whole life is about this body mind. Everything I do in a day is about this body mind, Oh, I got to take the thing out for a walk. Oh, I got to take the thing to the bathroom. Oh, I got to clean the thing. Oh, I got to brush its teeth. Oh, I have to clean its ears. Oh, I have to try and, keep this hair somewhere within 3 feet of my head. It's like this constant, the body mind is constant, our attention to it is constant. And if you say you're not body mind, what are you? What are you? And it's so funny because this is such a quintessential, fundamental part of our experience of life. And so I've been going inside the last few months and paying attention. Where is body in my inner world? How does my body communicate with me? Where are its edges within me? So what does it mean? Why do I think I'm a body? And what am I paying attention to inside when that thought is there? And so I've begun making a mental map list of all of the ways my body communicates with me, right? Just becoming aware of the edges. What are the boundaries of my body? So that when I say I'm not the body, I know exactly what I'm saying inside. I know what I'm excluding when I say I'm not the body, right? Whereas before I had no idea. It was just this amorphous, the body. Yeah, of course, I'm not that. It'll die. But it didn't, nothing came in to fill the space. I didn't know what did that mean? What am I because of that? So it's been very helpful going inward and mapping out how the body communicates with me and how it tells me about itself and how I check in with it, how I figure out what it is and where it is and what it needs and how it's doing. And then I started doing the same thing for the mind. I thought, okay, I'm not mind. Well, what are the boundaries of mind? Where is mind in my inner world? Right? And just spending time studying your inner experience. Meditation isn't just about saying the mantra. It's about going inside. It's about learning your inner world, becoming familiar with your inner world, because that's where infinity is. That's where God is. That's where your realization is. That's where everything is. There's actually no outside at all. And so this is a very important thing for us to know. What does it mean to not be a body mind? Because it takes the lid off of infinite possibility. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. And so in order that when we start this self-negation, we have to be aware of what we're negating. We have to be aware of what we're talking about. So you look inside. What are the boundaries of your ego? What things do you tell yourself that keep you safe? What things that do you tell yourself that keep you confident, that keep you, separate from the whole. It's like, you've got to go in and really understand, how are you constructing ego? How are you adding to it? What does the ego, what is it looking for? What does the ego do when it's not watched? To learn these things about yourself, because you have to deconstruct. You have to know what defines ego and what doesn't. And what do you live according to in your ego that isn't valid? What things do you tell yourself that just aren't true? What things do you take refuge in that are not refuges? What solutions does your ego provide to you that are not solutions? So we have to go this inner world. We have to live there. We have to be there, because that's all that is real. And so knowing what body mind is, knowing how you interact with it, knowing where they are, and then the final question is, like, once you know those boundaries, what are they boundarying? What part of that is me, right? And this is the hardest part. Body mind, easy to find those things. Just go in there and look. But finding the self, how do you look at the thing that has your eyes in it? How do you study the thing that can't be put in front of you? How do you learn something about something that you can't observe, that you can't read, that you can't touch, that you can't smell, taste, or any of the other senses, right? And so it's this skill. I would call it the skill of periphery vision. Where you go inside and you stare at the Lord, and you become aware of everything else peripherally. You can't look at it because you are your own eyes, but you can peripherally become aware, of like, in the same way, think about your face, right? We've never seen our face, and we never will. So you've never seen your face. You're like, oh, but I've looked in a mirror. Well, that's not your face. It's a reflection of your face. And so it's, first of all, it's inverted. You see yourself in the opposite way than anybody else sees you. Your sides switch, right? That's it's an interesting thing, because you think this is what you look like, but you're actually a mirror image of yourself. Everybody else sees the non-mirror image. You, when you look at your own face, are always looking at the mirrored image. So you have an inverted idea of what you look like. And so these things, just poking, this is why they call it waking up. It's looking at all of the millions, I dare say millions of assumptions that you make every hour of the day in order to function in ego space, in order to survive in a world of the unknown, where your knowledge of the world you live in is less than 3 whys deep. Look at any one thing and ask yourself why. I always talk about that, the wisdom of a toddler. The toddler is great for making any adult look like a fool. The toddler will ask you 3 times in a row, oh, why are the clouds in the sky? Oh, because the heat has warmed the water and they're floating in this fine mist. Oh, why? Oh, well, because the sun hits the water on the earth and it evaporates up in. Well, why? By the time you get to the third why, you're dumb. That conversation always ends with either two things. If you're religious, oh, God said so. That's the final summary. Or that's just the way it is. You can't go more than 3 whys deep before you run out of ego space, before you realize that your boundary of self and understanding of self is very shallow, very thin. And so, he's pointing at a lot of this. And so he's saying, but what you have to do is negate, but you have to know what you're saying to yourself inside before you can negate what you're saying to yourself inside. You have to hear the lies. You have to become aware of the lies that you tell yourself in order to negate them. And that's a big part of practice that I think we just don't think about very much. We kind of forget. We focus on the mantra, which is good. That will do the trick. It will do the trick. But it's in order to negate it, like he's saying here, going one by one, understanding what your wrong thinking is, identifying it, and then negate it is much more, is very effective, for seeing your delusion. So that we understand when we say, oh, I'm deluded, we know exactly what we mean by that. We're like, oh yeah, I tell myself this and I tell myself that. That's how desire gets control of us, is by not thinking about it, not being aware of it. This is the whole reason that Thakur calls us to inner discernment. What is inner discernment? It's exactly what we're talking about. It's going in and finding out what is real in me and what is not real. Where do my stories come from? Because one of the cool things I learned that was very obvious but not known to me is that all desire arises from either body or mind. The self never brings up a desire inside. There is no desire in the self. All of your desires, and this is a great study as well, look at the things you desire. Think of something you want. They always belong to either the body or mind. Always belong to body, mind. Desire is not natural to you, which is why we want to be desireless, because it's not natural to live in desire. We are that infinite, ever free, ever pure self, content to the core. So desires, when we see them, we can know our attachment immediately because we say, my desire. But when you do the study inside, you realize, I have no desires. My mind has tons of them. My body has another ton of them. But I have none. And until I identify with my body and say, oh, those are my desires, or identify with my mind and say, oh, those are my desires, you're without desire. So by nature, you are without desire. When you're identified with body mind, we always think, oh my God, how am I ever going to be desireless? Oh my gosh, what an amazing state of accomplishment that is. No, that's one of your lies to yourself. That's one of your delusions. You are the master of desirelessness. Your inner self has never raised a desire. It is only identified with desires of mind and body. So you're free in there. And I, while I'm talking about what a master of desirelessness you are, I want to remind you what a master of renunciation you are. Because all of us talk about, oh, renunciation, oh, it's so hard to renounce, oh, I can't do that, oh, it's too difficult. People tell me when I tell them I'm a monk, like, oh my God, I could never do that. The thing is, you do that every single night, right? You lay down and you go to sleep and you enter into a dream. What is required of you to enter into a dream? That you renounce everything. You forget your job, you forget your family, you forget your body, you forget your life story, you forget everything. And you leave it behind without a hint of it within yourself, and you enter into the dream and you take a new body, you take a new face, you take a new world, you take a new whatever's happening in the dream. You completely take it all on as being yourself. And you see, if you study that, if you look at that, how easily you attach and just move into your waking body and live, and then how easily you can completely withdraw from that body and mind and memory and experience, and then enter into a completely new body, in a completely new world, in a completely new environment, new everything, and not be disturbed, not even stumble for a second in that process. That shows you the nature of God. Why Vivekananda says one of the names of God is identity. God is identity. He can identify with anything he touches, anything he approaches, right? Which is why it's so easy for us to identify with body, because that's just one of the things of the divine. This ability to just, because it has both all attributes and no attributes, it can take them on or shed them with no effort whatsoever. And you do it every day. And so the next time you hear yourself tell yourself that story that you can't renounce, or how difficult renunciation is, remember it's a lie. It's a lie of ego self. Why? Because the ego needs to be in charge. The ego needs to be in charge. The ego needs desires to keep you distracted. It needs things to keep itself important. It needs promises that it can whisper in your ear. Oh, I can do this. I'll do this. We can manage this. this little I that does everything. The ego collects all of that. And so this is why we have to go inside of ourselves, find out, map out our inner world, become fully aware of what's in there, understand ourself within that paradigm. Where am I in my world inside? And you come to realize that the self is boundaryless. It has no geolocation. It's not, you can't even really be sure that you are in this body, right? And actually, I'm pretty sure at this point, for myself anyway, that I'm not in this body. I don't even think there's a soul in this body. I actually think, I'm guessing, but I feel like it's just behind you, that your soul is actually just behind you. It's not in you at all. Why? Because there is no you. This body is an imagined thing. It doesn't real. It's not real. Just like a dream body. You know, in your dream, you think you're inside the dream body. You're not. Where are you in the dream? Well, you were the whole dream, for crying out loud. You're everything in there. You're not in any particular thing in that dream. Even though you fully identify with your dream body, even though you fully identify with your dream perspective, the reality of it is that you're asleep, and your sense of I has gone crazy. It's taken on a whole new everything, but it's still telling itself the lie. I'm a particular in this dream. I'm not the whole dream. Those are mountains over there, even though it's impossible for them to be mountains because you're asleep. It's in your head. Those mountains are 150 miles away. No, they're not. They're between your ears. They can't be more than 7 inches away. And yet, so you study your dream and you can find out all the lies that you tell yourself in the dream. And then you start examining your waking self and you realize those are the exact same lies that my ego tells me in the waking state. So you are, in fact, a master renunciate. You are, in fact, a master at this self-negation. It's just your ego self won't let you know that. And that's why it itself must be negated. You have to hear it tell you that. And then you have to say, oh, no. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. And I'm not the attachment to either one of them. Nothing of that is me. I'm not in the body. I'm not in this world. This world is in me, right? This is what Vivekananda says. He had that experience directly. Thakur talks about it that way as well. That the realization, there's a lot happens in realization, but one of the major things is you realize all of this happened within you. You were not in the world. You were never in the world. The world has always been in you. It's always been within you, right? And so we come to know this. So he says, why so much stress on this self-negation, right? Why are we always interested in what we're not? Right? Why do we always have to say not this, not this, not this? Right? Because if you say you could go in the positive, you certainly could. But do you know why they tell us not to do that? Because your ego is ready to grab on and claim everything. And if you tell your ego you're God, your ego will love that. You'll love that. Suddenly you'll write off your responsibility to everything. Oh no, I'm God. I don't have to do that. No, I don't have to do that. And we have this notion. So that's why Thakur says, don't do the positive thing. Don't say, oh, I'm that, and I'm that, and I'm that, and I'm that, and I'm that. He says, as long as you think you have a body, as long as you get up and take a shower first thing in the morning, know that you're not ready for the inclusion. Negation is still for you. So separate yourself out until you find that self at the root of all of it. And that's when Thakur says, at that point, once you've done that, then you know yourself to be everything else. You don't have to go through that process. You know immediately that you are everything in your dream. You are the mountains in the distance. You're the character that holds the idea of me and mine in the dream. You're everything. So why so much stress on this negation, on this I'm not this, I'm not that? Maharaj says, well, as much as on self-realization, the false self must be abandoned before the real self can be found. And I want to share, because it's an interesting thing. I haven't mastered it at all. But it's interesting enough to share. It's like this idea of who are you can't be answered in words. And yet we're always looking for words to tell us who we are. And so there's a big hint in that. In silent mind, when nothing is telling you who you are, you will know who you are. But you have to stop listening to body mind telling you what you are. Your mind is going to tell you things. Your body is going to tell you things. And we believe them because of our attachment to those two things. And that forms our egoism. And our whole egoism is based on a lie, based on misinformation, based on non-existent something or other, really, because your whole ego is based on memory, based on the past. It does not take the present into account, which is why this practice of the presence is so important. Because to be present is to be realized. To be present is to be realized. And so as long as we are believing ourselves to be an entity that's based completely on memory, that means we're an entity based completely on experience and past, both of which are not real, both of which only constructs of mind, right? As long as we're in that state, we can never be present. To be present is to have no thought, because to watch a thought puts you in the past. You have to stand in the past to watch a thought. You have to stand in the past to watch an experience, right? Because if you stand in the present, you're standing on it. You can't look at it. You're standing on it. And if you're standing on it, you're not calculating on it. You're not thinking about it, because thinking can only happen in the past, about the past. It can't happen in the present. The present is purely spontaneous, right? And that's why they talk about spontaneity of the realized soul. The realized soul spontaneously has infinite wisdom available to him. It's not referential, because again, to reference knowledge, to find knowledge, you have to stand behind it. You have to get into the past and look for it. Ask the mind, ask the body for information, right? So you're always behind time as long as you're an ego self. You're always based on the non-existent when you're an ego self. So to break that, this negation, we have to stop thinking. We have to stop the noise. We have to stop the identity. And we have to go someplace where no one is saying anything to us about who we are. And that's where the miracle happens. That's where realization, that's why they call it realization. In that silence, in the absence of anything defining you and telling you, whether it's thought or whether it's experience, in the absence of that, you know who you are. And that's realization. When you finally know what you are, when nothing is telling you what you are, right? That's realization. That's to know. And that's where you are comfortable with infinity and without words, because it can't be talked about. It can't be described. Right? Anything that can be talked about and be described is confusing. And why is it confusing? It serves to break down our mental pride. This whole world is designed to kick you out. It's your stubbornness that holds on to it. Right? The whole world, all of your desires are meant to kick you out. That's why they don't last. They're not fulfilling. They're constantly needed. You can't keep them alive more than a few seconds at a time. This world is designed, I like to think of it as a world in which every blanket is 6 inches too short. And it's designed that way. And the mind is dumb enough to think that it has to try on every blanket in the world before it realizes that they're all 6 inches too short. The wise man tries 1 or 2 of them and be like, hey, all these blankets are too short, and stops, abandons ship. I'm done. I'm not going to go looking for any more blankets, right? So this is why the stress on self-negation, he says, as much as on self-realization. So you don't want to be only on the negation, right? You want to be on the realization. So you want to be at the same time you're negating everything. Vivekananda says you want to remind yourself of your freedom. You want to remind yourself of your immortality. You want to remind yourself of your contentment. Remind yourself of your pure love as a nature. And go within and learn to love yourself
with your nature. Learn to use your nature to talk to yourself, to inform yourself. Be informed by the unconditioned love that you are. Become aware of that unconditioned love and allow it to remain unconditioned. The ego wants to use it to increase its power. So it puts conditions on it that others have to meet in order to be liked by you, in order to be treated well by you. Right? That's how the ego keeps you in charge, by limiting your love that you give, using it as a reward to those who deserve it around you in your life. You have to stop that. You have to naturally love everyone without a reason. There's only one reason. That's oneness. So the false self must be abandoned before the real self can be found. You have to shut up the mind. You have to shut up the body so that they stop telling you the lie about what you are. And since you are something that cannot be described, in that silence, only in that silence of mind, can you come to know? Can you come to realize something that cannot be verbalized, something that cannot be thought about, something that cannot be held, something that cannot be boundaried? And that's your nature. So the questioner says, well, the self you choose to call false is to me most distressingly real. Indeed. Look how much time I spent on my hair this morning, knowing that it's unreal. It's like we do. I fed myself a wonderful breakfast of berries and coffees and toasts, and made sure that all of it was done to my liking. I had to tell how much sugar I want. Oh yes, half and half is fine, right? Because we believe this to be ourself, and we just go about serving ourselves, serving our body, serving our mind, as if that's normal. But it's not normal. It's the work of a toddler. There's a cafe not far from my house in Lafayette, and they have a little play area for kids. It's a very family-oriented cafe. And so they have all these wooden food items and a little wooden fake oven and a little wooden pots and pans. And I was sitting there the other day trying to write a lecture, and I was watching this little girl make wooden cookies for everybody in the cafe. She was just going to the stove and putting these things around, putting it in the oven, bringing it out, putting it on a tray, and then going to complete strangers and giving them wooden cookies. Here's one for you, and here's one for you. That's what your whole life is, my friend, from God's perspective. The Divine Mother is sitting there watching you make wooden cookies for everybody. And it's adorable, and it's sweet, and it's lovely, but it's not real. It's not what you are. It's just a nice manifestation, right? So he says, the self that you choose to call false is to me most distressingly real. It's the only self I know. Isn't that true? What else do we know? What you call the self is a mere concept, a way of speaking, a creature of the mind, an attractive ghost. My daily self is not a beauty, I admit, but it is my own and my only self. You say that I am or have another self. Do you see it? Is it a reality to you? Or do you want me to believe what you yourself don't see? Wow. This guy's putting him right in a corner. The Maharaj says, don't jump to conclusions rashly. Don't accept everything that's coming to you in this moment. Don't accept it. The concrete need not be the real. It's fascinating. What would you call the concrete? That's the things of the senses, the definitions of the mind. Those are the concrete. The concrete need not be the real. The conceived need not be the false. Perceptions based on sensations and shaped by memory imply a perceiver whose nature you never cared to examine. Give it your real attention. Examine it with loving care, and you will discover heights and depths of being which you did not dream of, engrossed as you are in your puny image of yourself. This is exactly what we've been talking about since we've started today. This is exactly it. Don't jump to conclusions rashly. Just don't assume your thoughts are true. Don't assume your body is real. Don't assume you can't renounce or that it's difficult. Don't assume, that you have a noisy mind. Don't assume that you are ignorant and that you can't know God. Don't assume that spiritual life is difficult. Don't assume that you're a lousy meditator. Don't assume that you're impure. Don't assume that you've got many lifetimes of work ahead of you before you can realize God. Don't assume any of that. Nonsense. These are the lies and stories of ego about sourced in body mind, right? And we place, you see, even as this questioner is asking these questions, you can see how he has placed his identity squarely in the middle of all of that, right? And because of that, can't even conceive that there's something outside of that the master is talking about. So don't jump to conclusions rashly. Pay attention. Do that inner work. First of all, figure out who's telling it to me. Where is this information coming from? Is it coming from body or is it coming from mind? Because neither of those are real. And so I should consider that when I listen to it. The information I'm getting, I should know it's coming from an unreal source. So how much attention do I pay to it? How obedient to it am I going to be? So you think about that, because the concrete need not be real. The senses, the things the senses tell you need not be real. You can push against that if you want, but then go to a movie and you'll see very quickly that the things your senses and your mind tell you don't have to be real. That your mind, your senses and your mind will have you weeping at a movie in no time short, have you screaming in horror in no time short. For what? For some colors on a screen and a soundtrack. And you're running out like a terrified teenager. What is this? So that's the thing. Your body and mind don't tell truth. They don't tell you about the real. They just tell you. They don't even care whether it's real or not. They have no agenda. They're just presenting. Look at this. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. Right? And that's why he says here, he really lines it up nicely. Perceptions based on senses, on sensations, right? So the sensations is the source. So we get these perceptions. And then you take those sensations and you shape them by memory. What have they meant to me in the past? What have I done in the past with these things, right? And that's when your samskaras come into play to determine what you're going to do with it this time. And you're going to base that on what you did with it the last time. So it's shaped by memory. And this whole thing is implying a perceiver. Someone is taking these sensations from the body mind. Some things are taking these things from memory, shaping them, giving them meaning, giving them purpose, giving them a place in time, space, and causation, and then putting them in a box in the mind that's relatively located nice and neatly with all of the other relational things. He says, but it implies a perceiver. It implies someone who's observing all of these things and watching all of these things. And he says, and that nature, you've never cared to examine. Well, many of us, but it's more difficult to say this to a group of Vedantins because most of us have at least once wondered about the perceiver, right? But I remember I've told that story like all my stories 1,000 times. But that one day when I read in the gospel, when I first moved in the monastery, and Thakur gives us that wonderful piece of information, that which changes is unreal. The unchanging alone is real. And I remember reading that and I was like, wow, that is like the first piece of solid philosophical statement that I can actually do something with. And so I ran up to the shrine with the excitement of thinking of things that don't change so that I could finally see the real. And I sat there like an idiot for 2 hours trying to think of anything. I just kept going through one thing after another, after another, after another. And finally, it was just like, there's nothing that doesn't change. That's absurd. Does that mean that nothing is real? Is that what he's trying to teach me? And so I went to the lunch table with Swami Prabhupada and I told him, I said, Maharaj, nothing's real. What do you do in a situation where nothing is real? And I told him what I was trying to do. He got that lovely smile that Swami had, looked at me with these little impish eyes, and he just said to me, did you consider that which was looking?
I tell you, my teeth almost fell out. I was like, whoa, whoa, how weird that I didn't think of that. For 2 hours, I sat there observing one thing after another that my mind presented to me, going, no, 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 no. Not once did I think about that. This thing that was looking. Not once did I consider that. And that is the one unchanging thing. That is the one change, the thing that is real. You, that self within, the observer of everything in your life. Right? He says, give it to, he says, you've never cared to examine this perceiver. He says, give it your full attention. And this is a trick too. How do you give your attention full attention? How do you give the perceiver full attention? Because it can't perceive itself. It can't see itself, right? So this is what makes it very difficult. We're being asked to study something in a way that we have never studied anything else. Everything else that we study, we gather and we put it in front of our senses. And we apply all of our senses to it. We look at it from different angles. We touch it, we smell it, we might taste it, we might listen to it. And that's how we learn. That's how we understand things. And now we're in a situation where we're trying to understand the studier, that which is interested. You can't put it in front of you. You can't apply your senses to it. Because it's just behind all of those things. It's on the wrong side of all of those things. And so this is why the call to inner silence, right? It's only in inner silence that you can know the perceiver. And you know it intuitively. You can, after those attachments get broken, you feel it, you can sense, I see. You know? And it's funny because you can't even think about it. Because thinking requires attachment. Thinking requires identity with mind, right? And so you can't even think about it. You just have to experience it in the now. And that is realization. And so when we go inside, we have to go inside and learn in a completely different way. We have to abandon our tools of learning, our tools of reasoning, and we have to sharpen our tools of silence, our tools of awareness, our tools of openness, stretching everything. And instead of using our body and mind as tools of action and pursuit, change everything about yourself into an ear. Change everything into an ear, a listener, and close your eyes and go inside with that. Everything is listening. Nothing is contemplating. Nothing is thinking about. Nothing is calculating. Everything is listening to the silence. And in that is when you come to know yourself. In that is when you come to know what you are. The questioner, I must be in the right mood to examine myself fruitfully. Maharaj, you must be serious. You must be intent. And you must be truly interested. Right? This isn't something that can be half done. You have to go, and this is why that the scriptures are constantly telling us you've got to come to that. You've got to practice that one-pointedness. You have to be able to hold your attention on something, without it wavering, moving around, wandering, because there's things that you will come to know in this inner silence that require that one-pointed attention, even on itself, because you'll start to sense something very interesting. You'll begin to deal with things that can't be dealt with. All of these infinities that can't be managed. There's an awareness that arises around them, but your attention wants to slip and go back to mind, wants to slip and go back to body. And, you can't learn these things until you soak yourself in them. So you have to bring your awareness back to its own awareness. Bring yourself back to silence, the silence between words, as opposed to the words, the space between objects, aside from the objects, right? Eckhart Tolle tells us we have to become equally aware of the silence between words and the space between objects, because it is the silence that allows for words and it is the space that allows for objects, right? And so we really have to work at that, because we are put together in the complete opposite way. We pay attention to objects, don't pay any attention to the space around them. We pay attention to noises, to music. We don't pay any attention to the silence around it. And yet the silence is what allows it. The space is what allows it. So you must be serious, intent, and truly interested. You must, oh, here's a beautiful statement. You must, this is a commandment. He's writing this as an absolute, as a instruction to you. And what a pleasant instruction it is. You must be full of goodwill for yourself. Is that not beautiful? And how odd that that might be challenging to some of us. You must be full of goodwill for yourself. And of course, what does this point at more than anything else? Grace. The only way that you can be full of goodwill for yourself is to accept the unconditioned grace and love of God. That's where your value comes from. You look at yourself and you're like, wow, the God of the universe loves me. Why? The God of the universe has given infinite grace to me. Why? The God of the universe is all about me coming to realization. Why? Why does it matter at all? It matters because the nature of all of it is pure love and pure wisdom and pure being. That's the nature of the ultimate reality. And only through a distinct awareness and trust and surrender to that love and that grace can you be filled with goodwill toward yourself. And that goodwill means that you allow yourself to experience a bliss you do not deserve. That means that you get to experience a state of reality that you have not earned, that you cannot earn, that you give yourself permission to be infinitely positive in a world that denies it at every step. Right? So this is an exercise in grace, even here in Jnana Yoga. It's the nature of the universe that allows you to fill yourself with goodwill toward yourself. The question immediately does exactly what all of us do, right? And the reason we're not realized. I am selfish, all right. Right? I'm selfish, all right. Immediately we look at the reasons it's not true. Immediately we look at our faults, right? And the guilt comes up, the shame comes up, the worry comes up, all of those things come up. If we could just leave them behind covered in grace, we could move beyond them. But that's the thing, your karma exists in your mind. It's held by your mind. It's defined by your mind. And it's you who subjects yourself to it. And it's you who insists on carrying it everywhere you go, all the time. I like to remind myself when I die, it's not going to be a third party something or rather out there that looks at me and looks through its naughty and nice list and says, well, you've got this number of points, but we have to take off this many. I'm afraid, Swami C, you're now a piggy. I'm afraid your next life is a pig. There you go. Get over there. No, I don't want to be a pig. Get over there. As God, this third party, kicks me into the pig body and says, go, you're a pig now. Get out of here. It's not like that, right? You are that. It's your own mind that will make your choices. Nobody's going to force you to be a pig. For some reason, you're going to walk along and like, oh, there's a body of a pig. You mean I can be a pig? Cool. And you jump in, and now you're a pig.
No yama.
That's right. Yes, indeed. It's you who determines your next birth. That's why the scriptures say that the person who says, I am free, will be in fact free. Because you're the one that decides. You're the one that carries your karma. You're the one that makes your karma apply to you.
You're the one that won't forgive, that won't let go, that won't be free. Right? You carry it with you. Just watch your mind when you go into a shrine. Just watch your mind while you meditate. Look, it's constantly bringing your karma up, constantly telling you why you can't meditate and why this is so difficult. And oh my God, this is an hour of meditation, that's too much. Just do 20 minutes. It's okay today. No problem. You know, like that, because you carry it with you and you apply it to yourself. And so you can't help that, and you can't change that, and you can't transcend that until you know that, until you go into your inner world and suss it out, figure it out. That's a British word. I don't know if you know that. I learned that word when I was in Britain. The word suss. Let's suss it out. Let's go explore it. Let's go poke at it. Let's go find out the real nature of it. So you have to go into yourself, into your mind, into your inner world, and suss it out. What's it composed of? How's it put together? How does everything talk to each other? How does everything interact in here? Where do my thoughts come from? Where do they go? All of this is for you to observe. It's all there in front of you. But just like he said above, we don't pay any attention to the perceiver. Right? So he says, so the questioner says, oh, I'm selfish, all right. And the Maharaj, listen to this. This is spoken personally to each one of us. Every word he's going to say right now is very important. You are not. Right? So anytime that you hear your mind bring up any of your faults, no, you're not. I'm not a mean person. I'm not a selfish person. I'm not an angry person. I'm not a gay person. I'm not a straight person. I'm not a gendered person. I'm not old. Ouch, that one hurts. No, but these notions, no, you're not. You are all the time destroying yourself and your own by serving strange gods, inimical and false. Strange gods. They're called gods because we serve them. What are the things you serve? You know, your body wants spaghetti. So you're going to go worship the body at the spaghetti factory tonight by feeding it spaghetti. And not just spaghetti, but your favorite spaghetti with all the best things your mouth wants. Right? That's worshiping a strange god. Right? So you are all the time destroying yourself and your own by serving strange gods, inimical and false. By all means, be selfish. Oh, Swami told me this. By all means, be selfish, but in the right way. Wish yourself well. Labor at what is good for you. Destroy all that stands between you and happiness. Be all. Love all. Be happy. Make happy. No happiness is greater. Right? So there you are. In the face of these small ideas that you have about yourself, in your list of categorical things that you do wrong, that you're unable to do, that are impossible, that are awful, that are mean, that are selfish, in the means of all of that, stand there strong in the self and look at the mind as it tells you all the moods you're in and all the things you think and feel about others. And put your hands on your hips and say, no, I'm not. I am not the mind. I am none of those things. And then when the body brings up its moods, it's sick and it's old and it's painful and it's, not what you want it to be. Stand there again in the self and put your hands on your hips. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm ever free. I'm ever loved. I'm immortal. I've never died. I've never been born. I am that pure love, pure wisdom. I am existence itself. I'm subject to nothing. And know it to be true. And own that freedom, because that freedom is your nature.
he says, no happiness is greater than this. My questioner says, well, oh, it's 10 o'clock. We're going to stop there.